Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cutting right through the noise on a huge debate about what's good for your heart. Because right now, official government advice and some massive new science, well, they're heading for a total collision. Okay, so let's just jump right in. On one hand, you've got the brand new official US guidelines, and they're basically saying, hey, eat more beef. But then, on the other hand, a huge new study from Harvard comes out and says, whoa, not so fast. You should be focusing on plants. I mean, they're pointing in completely opposite directions. So, who do you believe? Who do you trust when it comes to something as important as your heart? And really, this goes way beyond just what you're putting on your plate tonight. It's about learning how to look at the health advice we get bombarded with every single day and, think critically about it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put these two powerful sources right up against each other. In one corner, you have the official U.S. dietary guidelines, and in the other, this massive 30-year research project from Harvard University. It's a real academic showdown, and your health is literally right in the middle of it. All right, let's start with the official side of things. We'll look at this recommendation that just came out last month, the one that's stirring up so much debate. And check this out. What's so fascinating here is the visual itself. You know the classic food pyramid, right? The big stuff at the bottom is what you're supposed to eat a lot of. Well, this new version flips it upside down. It literally puts steak right at the very top, which, that's a pretty strong visual cue that we should be eating more red meat. But that just begs the question, doesn't it? Where did this advice even come from? For any of us trying to think critically, that's the first thing we should ask. How exactly are these super influential national guidelines put together? And, who gets to have a say? Well, this quote might give us a clue. This is from a representative of the Iowa Beef Industry Council, and they're saying they're really exciting that over 20 research projects funded by the beef industry were used to develop these exact guidelines. So, yeah, that's a pretty interesting piece of the puzzle. Okay, so that's one side of the story. Now let's pivot and look at the other side of this debate. This is the counterargument, and it comes from a huge new study from researchers over at Harvard, just published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. And when I say this study was massive, I mean it. We're not talking about a small group of people here. They tracked the dietary habits of almost 200,000 participants. That is a staggering number of people. And it wasn't just a quick look either. They followed these people for more than 30 years. 30 years. That gives us this incredibly rare, super valuable, long-term perspective on how what we eat actually affects our health over an entire lifetime. And during that time, the researchers were able to analyze over 20,000 documented cases of coronary heart disease. So you can imagine that gives them a gigantic set of data to work with to find real patterns. So here's the really crucial part. This is what the study zeroed in on. They found that it didn't really matter if a diet was called low-carb or low-fat. Those labels weren't the important thing. What really mattered was whether it was a healthy version of that diet. And what did they mean by healthy version? Well, they defined it very clearly. A diet that's packed with high-quality plant-based foods and is low in animal products. Okay, so 30 years of data, almost 200,000 people. The big question is, what did the Harvard researchers actually find? What did all that work tell us? Well, the results were about as clear as they could be. It didn't matter what you called the diet. If it was full of plant-based foods, whole grains, and good fats, the risk for heart disease went down significantly. And on the flip side, if it was heavy on refined carbs and animal products, that risk went up. And this wasn't just some abstract observation. They could actually see the biological proof. The people on those plant-focused diets had better health markers all around. I'm talking lower levels of those fats in your blood called triglycerides, higher levels of the good HDL cholesterol, that's the stuff that kind of cleans out your arteries, and less chronic inflammation, which we know is a huge driver of all sorts of diseases. And to top it all off, the journal's own editor-in-chief basically put the final stamp on it. He said that what this research proves is that the single most important thing for your heart isn't the name of your diet, it's the quality of your food. And he says that quality points straight toward plants. So we've seen the showdown. Government guideline on one side, landmark university study on the other. What's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the biggest lesson here seems to be that we need to look past all those trendy diet labels. The whole low-carb versus low-fat debate, it might be the wrong conversation entirely. What this massive pile of data suggests is that the real conversation for your heart should be about the quality and the source of what you're eating. It's about focusing on high-quality plans instead of high quantities of animal products. So now you've seen the evidence from a 30-year study, and you have a little more insight into how dietary guidelines can be influenced. Which brings us to the final question, and this one is for you to answer for yourself. Looking at all of this, what does the evidence tell you is best for your heart?